for life. So, this is Senate Appropriations again, and we're taking up the Yield Bill H87 as it's come out, of finance late Friday evening. And, I know that the committee is doing still some work and maybe offering an amendment, but that I don't think will impact, the, the action of this committee. It's something that they can do sequentially who are voting the bill out. And so, I think what we're gonna go through is the money. Obviously, they have raised some taxes to fund, the increase in education spending. And then, what we're doing here is authorizing the expenditure at the level the revenues with those additions will support. So with that, I'll turn it over to.
Thank you. So Kirby Dean, Legislative Council. My plan is to walk through the tax and revenue sections. As the chair mentioned, there's some education policy and some study sections that were written by my colleague, Beth St. James, who's not available right now. But Senate Finance did not actually at this point change those sections anyway. The changes were from the things that I'm going to talk about. So, okay, so we'll start on section 2, which is on page 12. On line 5, and section 2 is setting the yields for fiscal year 25.
Could I ask a question? We just passed out the BOCES bill, and I see here there's a BOCES grant program and appropriation, and I'm wondering,
What page?
well, this, 16. And I'm just wondering how that aligns with what we just passed from education.
What line on page 16?
Page 16, section 4, BOCES grant program appropriation.
I don't know if that's right,
Bill.
I don't know.
We're looking at,
Oh, this is the House bill, I'm sorry.
okay.
Oh, sorry.
So we're
Oh,
looking
I
at
don't
draft.
have, this is,
That's the prior one this looked at.
what?
That's 630.
Yeah.
Oh, this,
Finance.
sorry, I didn't realize they had both of them. Oh, all right, sorry.
Yeah, they
So
get,
the BOCES is not there.
No,
Oh, good. I was gonna say, I hope the numbers are the same, but no problems. It's
Mhm.
not in there. I apologize. All right, I'm getting that out because it's a strike all, right?
it is a strike.
All right, so,
Draft 2.1 of H8,
yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, so section 2 on page 12 sets the yields based on the revenue that's in the bill and on the numbers of, this is what I'm speaking for JFO a little bit here because this is all them, but my understanding is that it's the school budget data that's available at the time going into the yields here, the revenue that's in the bill, and there's an assumption of a general fund transfer. Is it 20 or 25? 25. So that's what's going into the yields here. What is not here that was in the House version is the House had a provision to increase the property tax credit for fiscal year 25 by 14.97%, which I think is the percentage of the increase they were expecting in tax bills. So they're going to try to offset that and pay for it by adding to the non-homestead rate to pay for that. Senate Finance removed that. So there is not an increase to the property tax credit for 25, and there's not an increase to the non-homestead rate. So that's the difference. Or that's one difference here.
Well, they're also dropping down the rate of 12.5, right?
Yeah, so that's
the sheet here.
That's with the revenue that we had talked about earlier, the yield for change. Section 3, there's sections 3 and 4 have to do with the cloud tax that you probably heard of. It's specifically so applying the sales and use tax to pre-written software accessed remotely. Section 4 is a repeal of a 2015 session law that prevented Vermont from applying sales tax to pre-written software accessed remotely. So that's being repealed, so that's allowable. And then on section 3 here, it changes the definition of tangible personal property to specify that pre-written software or pre-written computer software is taxable regardless of the method in which the software is paid for, delivered, or accessed. The House has some additional language here about whether it's hosted by a vendor. That language was removed with the logic that the Department of Taxes could take less specificity, make an interpretation of what's taxable, and decide which of the types of software that's out there is considered a service in Vermont and what is considered tangible personal property. You know, if it's a service, it wouldn't be taxable. This was after discussion of having a possible exemption for business inputs for the computer software access remotely. There's not an exemption. That's not what Cineplex did. They just, again, they kind of made the definition of tangible personal property a bit more open to interpretations was where they left it. Any questions about cloud tax?
Now we're down to short-term rental.
Short-term rental surcharge was something that proposed from the House. This would piggyback on the existing rooms tax, except it would be an additional rate for just short-term rentals. That's defined by essentially lodging that is licensed by the Department of Health would not be a short-term rental. So those that aren't licensed would be. So your hotels and bed and breakfast and things would not be subject to this tax rate, but your rooms that are for rent that are put on the platforms that are not licensed would be subject to it. The House had proposed a 1.5% rate and Senate Finance changed that to 3%.
And this is a surcharge, so it all goes into the ed fund as opposed to the split with rooms and meals.
That's correct. So the next section of the bill, section 6, specifies that in the statute on the education fund that the revenues from the short-term rental surcharge are 100% deposited into the education fund. There's also some changes there about there's some existing revenue sources for the education fund that we went ahead and put into that section. Just as like a housekeeping type of change. That's on page 14. Good follow.
Yeah.
And then our next change, if you don't have any questions about that, the next change related to taxes is deeper.
All right, there's the analyst position that we've been referencing this, Karen, there's a question.
Yeah. Yeah. The
So
analyst
that creation of a position, obviously, has to be funded, so that's on our list. Now, the other thing that we've been holding open, and that's the education funding that in the budget itself, what that final figure is. And is that in here or is that here? Here.
Christopher Joint Fiscal, Madam Chair, you'll see that reflected on line 8 of the Ed Fund Outlook that you're holding. The money itself is not included in this bill, but the assumption of the money is reflected in the yields that are included in this bill.
No, I'm talking about the education payment line 11.
That would be in the cap back from the joint fiscal office, that would be in the budget bill, that number.
Okay, this is the final number, the 1893.3.
1.8, yes.
Okay.
I actually need to double check on that Ed Fund Outlook, but we got on an email from Julia Richter, who connected with the Agency of Education on what the final number is, so that it really has that final number. I'll double check if that number is on there, same with that.
No, that was the number I wasn't referring to the 25. So in other words, in summary, we're buying down the level of spending that voters in this state approve by putting in a 25 million one time because we have some capacity as a result of the anticipated, we actually we'll have to move it to the contingent in the money list because you have to have it for certain in calculating the tax rate. So we're doing that, plus we're raising more revenue to reduce the property tax rate increase down to 12.5%.
Yes, correct.
I hope people listening understand that that this is driven by the level of spending that has been approved by the voters in each town. Because we're gonna, obviously, people are gonna say, you're increasing taxes, and this does, I mean, the bill does, in order to support that level of spending without increasing property tax rates at a level that is lower than what was projected back in December. But it's still having an impact, obviously, and the 25 million, we're gonna have to agree to it when we're finishing the budget committee of conference, but that is only one time, it's not available to buy down the rate. So some of this is really getting back to what budgets will look like next year, the level of funding, because that 2.5 cents would have to be accommodated in next year's rate. Please tell me if I'm not understanding this correctly. But
Yeah, I have a question. Madam
yes,
Chair.
go ahead, Senator Starr.
Yes, what I'm wondering is the tax increases are gonna be statewide on everybody. And the ones that this is really gonna help is a handful of people with their budgets and that they voted within their community to increase, right? So I'm wondering if there are any numbers showing how many towns or how many communities are going to see their taxes go up because of helping these 15 or 17 other communities that are spending 12, 15% above what they normally are.
Well, I think probably with the statewide financing structure, everybody's gonna get to pay. But I will ask
Yeah,
either Kirby or Catherine, you've been working with Act 60 since the beginning, so you probably have a sense. But while there is some connection back to the individual town tax, depending on the level of spending, under the statewide mechanism, everybody gets to pay for the spending levels that cumulatively are approved by all the voters in the state who go and vote for a school budget. So the only thing I can say is, obviously, we're trying to mitigate the impact of that spending by putting in more revenues here, both ongoing and on a one-time basis. But
yeah, I
it's
think that
I don't know,
It's,
I don't know whether we've looked at,
it's
you know,
kind
you
of
could-
one-sided. Everybody's gonna pay, but only a
wait, I think you're frozen, Senator Starr. Yeah, everybody's gonna get to pay, that's what it boils down to. Senator Westman.
You have a question for Catherine.
Okay.
Fiscal. So the 12.5 represents how many million?
Oh,
That's the average.
that's the average, so 12.5% is the average increase in the property tax bill.
And the average increase across the state represents a dollar amount of 100 and,
Oh, how much is the overall estimated spending? It was, at one point, it was like 240 million over last
Right.
year.
So
I think
I
it's
would-
brought down
It's
under
come
200.
down, and I would say there are still a number of schools that have yet to resolve their budgets, so that, the big picture is,
Maybe down to 190, maybe?
I think we had in our budget, someplace around 190. Because we reduced by 16 million.
Yeah.
of what the increase is over, right? In total, education payment may in fact be coming down, but there's other,
It's come down a little bit
yeah.
from 1.9
I
down to
would
one
like to
point.
defer to Julia, who's been doing the runs, and she will get back to you on that. We can get you.
Yeah, it would be helpful if I could figure that out, because
It's still pretty big from 1.7 in 24 to 25, even at the lower rates, almost 1.9.
Yeah.
So that's too much, just a little shy of 200 million right there.
Yeah,
You just
that's
do
what I
that.
was looking, but the new money from the one time in the other taxes is 51 million.
So that reduces it 5 cents. Each 10 million is a penny.
That reduces that 5 cents, but if I could get the 12.5% increase, that will give me the total overall increase in revenue.
Well, some of it is yes, and some of it is driven by federal funding going away also, I think.
I
Yeah.
totally.
You're talking about federal one time.
Yes, yeah.
Well, that's not big.
That's not,
Yes.
in, quite frankly, from my point of view, when I see, districts across the state cutting mental health contracts with, local mental health agencies and hiring people, it doesn't make me very happy, particularly when, most of the, stuff they contracted with mental health agencies can get a Medicaid match and you can't in the school.
I will have Julia follow, we will have Julia follow up with you.
That was a conscious decision at the local level.
I think all of these are conscious decisions. And I know that whenever we're doing tax increases, people are not enthusiastic about doing it, but I, unlike all the other appropriations that we do, this is determined, the recommendation, unlike from the governor, this is the recommendation that the school boards make to their voters. And so by proposing spending at 15% more or 20% more is basically coming with it with a cost, because the spending obviously drives the revenues you have to raise. And so the first line of scrutiny we rely on is the school boards. And their understanding of how spending impacts the tax burden of their residents. It's simple as that, although it seems as though we're gonna get, I have to say, if you read the news, time and time again, it's the legislature who's doing this to you or in raising your taxes. And certainly unlike the rest of the state, we don't control this appropriation or say we need to reduce it by 5 million or 10 million. We just simply are authorizing and appropriating the amount of money
I
which is
understand,
here.
and what you're really saying in the bottom line is, it's the problem with the boarding.
It's the problem with the spending.
And,
Can I ask a question when we get to a stopping place?
So, I'm just, for people that are listening, it's just been very disconcerting to read in the paper that somehow this is, the legislature, it has created this, fiscal pressure here. And I know that we're gonna be getting feedback, and comments about the fact that we're raising taxes here. And we're raising taxes in a way to mitigate the substantial increase that our residential home and our property owners would otherwise experience. It's just simple as that. It's just trying to make it clear. Inherent in what this bill does is it will allow the property tax rates on average to go up at a much lower rate than the December letter would have indicated, but it's coming because of the additional revenues that are flowing in to offset that spending. That's all. I just want people to be clear that that's what this does and nothing more. So Senator Lyons, you have a comment.
Yeah, no, thank you, Senator Kitchell, because I do think it's important that folks understand that we are not responsible for the inflationary pressures that we're feeling right now on consumer products and everything in the state. And the result is it costs more to educate kids, and the result is also that then our local school boards are providing funding or suggesting funding for their local schools. So, and that's through a vote by all the voters in each district. But I do have a question about the cloud tax. It's a new tax, and I'm wondering if Ledge Council could just comment on how that cloud tax is going to be administered. Is it for one-time purchases? Is it for every time one goes out to use a software product and pays for it? How's it being structured? And I see that the Senate has one level and the House has the other level. Just to talk very briefly, because I know this is more of a finance question, possibly, but I'm interested in how it's being put in place.
Sure. So the way that it will work is it's going to be based on the sales price, just like everything else with sales tax. So, for free software, for instance, there wouldn't be a tax or anything. But when so under current law, arguably under Vermont's law as it's written, this could be done if it weren't for that session law from 2015, because it's considered tangible personal property under Vermont law. Some of it, some of what's called like cloud taxes or cloud services. But what's new is that so currently, actually, before I move on, currently if you download software, that's subject to tax already under current law, and something like streaming is considered a download of software, so that's already subject to tax. So what would be new would be instances where a person uses the internet to log into a system somewhere else and use the software that's on that system without downloading it. So that's the difference is accessing that software, and you're not taking possession of it, you're using it. But it's still considered a sale of tangible personal property because of the way the definitions are written. So this accessing a product remotely, though, has very, very many different ways that it can be done in the real world. And you get into things like paying to use the server space that's located somewhere else, or paying to use entire like suites of applications that are somewhere else. And then, so the more it starts to drift away from tangible personal property, the more it starts to be a subjective question of, is this software anymore, or is this now a service? And so the way that this is written coming out of Senate Finance is the Department of Taxes is going to have some work to do to work out the details there. We're not trying to work out those details in the language that we have now. So it's going to be up to the department. There's probably going to be formal rulings. If this were to become law, there will be companies that ask, are my products subject to taxes? They'll be giving the department scenarios. The department will have to come up with a logical system for determining when something's a service or not. And does that answer your question?
Yeah, yes, it does. It raises others, but that's very helpful. Thank you. I can see the cloud tax is everything from tangible, intangible, storage, whatever, and making those determinations. Thank you.
Other questions, for those meeting remotely? The one thing I will point out is, in addition, are we putting in the 25 million, but if you look at 24, we had, unreserved 31 million, and if you look at, what came out of the House and the Senate, you can see that, the reserves are minimal, unallocated and unreserved. And so, and the only reason I'm emphasizing this is it just shows that how the extent to which this year's tax rate has been softened, the increase has been softened by these one-time activities. Now, obviously, the additional taxes has had some impact, but certainly the amount of reserves that you have available, the amount of the 25 million, et cetera, are all going to make it, certainly the message is the level of spending and what we have for revenues next year is not, it's not gonna be there unless we have some more unexpected events. So, other comments? Otherwise, we're gonna have to move this, out. Kirby, you had some other sections?
There were some other sections if you're interested.
On money? Okay.
Well, it depends on, I'll just ask, so there's some change to how the common level of appraisal is used and calculated. Doesn't affect the end tax bills for anyone. I could describe that more if you want, or.
I know it's just looking at how it's functioned, and I left that up to the Ways and Means and Finance, and they're in agreement with that change, so
Okay,
I think that gets into intricacies that historically we haven't
okay.
taken up here.
The only other thing I would mention then would be some, that Act 127 had put a suspension on excess spending, but that's being removed, and excess spending would come back for fiscal year 26. And Senate Finance set the threshold for that at 116. Under current law, it's suspended right now, but under current law, it would be 121, and then the House, I think it changed it to 120, but Senate Finance decided to change that to. So whenever there's talking about cost constraints, that's the main thing that our system has. And Senate Finance has proposed to lower that to
trigger the penalty.
kick in at a lower rate. So excess spending is basically your local spending starts getting counted double. So if it's at 116, then if the district is spending more than 116% past the statewide average spending per pupil, then the spending starts getting counted twice for their homestead rate calculation.
Yes,
How many districts would fit above the 116?
Just based off my memory of seeing Julia's presentation on it, 10 to 15.
Madam Chair,
yes, sorry, Senator.
I will just kick in here that I did talk with Catherine and Julia about this, and I agree with the 116. That's our only real cost containment lever in this bill that I can see. So having it a bit below where the House landed strikes me as a move in the right direction.
Thank you. Any other comments from the remote members here? Otherwise, I'm gonna ask, Senator Furchlick had to go to a meeting, and I will hold the vote for when he comes back.
We can do the vote now, and I can.
That's what I'm talking about. So we'll do the roll call now and just hold the final count, to get Senator Furchlick's vote. So we need a motion to move the bill favorably, and Senator Baruch has moved.
Second,
Second. Is there more discussion? We'll call the roll.
Senator Baruch,
Yes,
Senator Lyons,
yes,
Senator Kirkslake and Sears on here, Senator Starr,
yes,
Senator Westman's no, Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
And I'll hold that.
Okay. And Senator Baruch, you'll be the reporter, because you have the education budget.
yep, okay.
All right. So that gets us through the three bills that we have. Thank you very much for coming in. I'm gonna go offline. We're adjourning the Senate Appropriations Committee for the day. And we will be back at, if possible, 3:30 for the Committee of Conference.